going to call the parking committee to order with Councilperson Dorsey and Mr. Flynn. So we're going to start with calling to order and then move on to comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance. Seeing none, we're going to move on to the garage management monthly report.
Good evening, Forrest Freeman with Reef Parking. So continuing our trend, things have been going up. From on the transient side, we're doing very well. Monthly side has dropped off a little bit. I'll explain that. It's kind of more people are paying transient because, why pay for a monthly if I'm only in the office 2 or 3 days a week? One of our larger accounts, Moody's, has decided to work remotely, so they have canceled their 78 parkers at Chestnut Street. So we saw a dip there. But outside of that, again, the transient's making up for it. We're doing well. We're beating budget on the revenue side. Even versus 2019, as I tend to like to compare to, we're up about $14,000. This month, same month in 2019. Year to date, we're up about 8%. A big chunk of that comes off of Bicentennial, and Chestnut Street, brings that down a little bit because it has a higher revenue stream. Return to work, Westchester University. As we head into November and December, we tend to dip a little bit in revenue. It's just, shorter months. You have Thanksgiving, the students start going home, which is also driving our revenue. So, but overall, again, numbers are good. The, monthly parking has rebounded. We took care of the waiting list. It was an allocation issue on our side, so it was our mistake, and we caught it. It was on the 24/7 parker, so there's 3 different kinds of parkers that throughout the garages, and we've never hit up against our allocation, and we hit up against our allocation that month. So we got all those people in after we figured that out, and now we're down to, I don't know, 3 parkers on the waiting list at Bicentennial, which is not unusual, and none at Chestnut Street. So taken care of. No problem. On the revenue side, it's Bicentennial keeps going up. Garage tends to be full most of the time. On Chestnut Street, seeing what looks to be a little dip. Actually, revenue is up, but more days in October than there were in September, which of course causes a little bit of a drop on an average basis. Same on the tickets, shows the similar trend. And then as we go to the continue upward trend, we will see that dip as you saw back in November, December of 2021. We dip down as we head into the winter months. We'll see that again, and then it'll pop back up again after that. Any questions, comments? I'm ready.
Can I ask a ridiculous question?
Sure.
Do you know anything about valet parking programs?
Sure I do. What would you like to know?
What would it take to start valet parking in Westchester?
So running it off in terms of restaurants and things of that nature, not an awful lot, as long as you have room and some place to put the cars. Because that tends to be the biggest issue is in a Philadelphia or a DC or a Baltimore is they tend to park the cars on the street, which takes away from on-street parking. As long as there's a place to put the vehicles, whether it be Chestnut Street or Bicentennial, and keep them off the street, it's a relatively easy program to start up. It is labor intensive, so there is an expense that's involved in it. As long as the offsetting valet charge or however we want to work that out, or there's all sorts of ways to do it. Happy to sit down and chat with you about it. It's kind of write up a quick plan. Again, overall, it's not particularly difficult. Yes, you need valet zones so that people can drop off their cars, and you need obviously to figure out the pass and everything like that. I've seen cities, boroughs, townships do it differently. There definitely should be requirements of putting cars in the garage. Where is your agreement with that garage? How is that working so that, again, they don't take up all the spaces on the street and don't care about their $25 ticket or $20 ticket or whatever it is, because they'll either throw it away and let the person find out about it. Not to say that we're bad like that, but occasionally it happens. It is bad. It is. We wouldn't do that. But yeah, so there's all sorts of ways to do it. I mean, sometimes you can set them up in, a valley stand that would handle 3 or 4 different establishments. So you're not, jamming the streets. It's, just laying out the plan. But yes, it's definitely doable. And yeah, just, how much labor?
Is it something that's viable in a town this size, or is it not worth really pursuing? Sean, I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
I mean, it's all about demand. I mean, if there's a need for it, if somebody wants it, then it's always viable. There hasn't been a tremendous demand, to my knowledge, for something like that because, I mean, honestly, Westchester's a beautiful walking town. You park in a garage, that's a few blocks away. You walk, especially on a beautiful night like tonight or in the day. It's not a big deal. So it just hasn't really been a need. And again, there's always some sort of expense with valet. And whoever's bearing it, you have to set the price of the parking at such a level so that, the operator is making their money, or, it just doesn't really work out. So,
Thank you.
but it is definitely doable.
Sean, do you have any thoughts on that?
It being driven by some restaurants in town that have talked to you?
No?
No, okay.
This came up at a bid meeting. It was sort of, John O'Brien had nothing to do with it. This was a conversation afterwards. It's also, as a child, I remember there being valet parking in Westchester. Nobody wanted to hang out in Westchester in 1987. So that was maybe what prompted that. I'd love to look at that. Thank you. It was a brief conversation. I thought it was worth bringing up, and it might not be something we need to think about that much. Just wanted to take a peek. So thank you. I appreciate
Easy
it.
enough to discuss that at any time.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Thank you. Have a good night.
Moving on to the director's report.
Good evening, Sean Metrick. And I'm no longer the Director of Parking because I'd like to introduce you to our new Director of Parking, Ramsey Reiner. So Ramsey comes to us, I grew up in Northern Florida. Grew up in Florida.
I did. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale.
Grew up in Fort Lauderdale. Ramsey has a wealth of local government experience. She's most recently was the chief executive officer at New Garden Township. She has great people skills. I look forward to her building the team and parking back up and coordinating our processes. She has experience managing public property with the city of Reading. She was borough manager in the city of South Coatesville. She also was in codes in West Bradford Township. She's really hitting it out of the park on the first day. So she basically can do everything really well. So we're really happy to have Ramsey here joining the team. So that's my exciting news. So next month, Ramsey will be giving this report. But I wanted to just focus a bit on our financial picture because I think there's some good news here. I did a budget versus actual report through the end of October, and we are at 94% of budgeted revenue collected to that date, and we should be at around 83%. 83% of the year has gone by as of the end of October, so that's good news. We're ahead of the game on our revenue because we're tracking to be over budget on parking meter revenue, on parking garage revenue. In fact, we've already made our parking garage revenue number for the year with two more monthly checks to go. And our parking ticket income is tracking right about at what we thought it would be budget-wise. So I think we'll hit the target there at the end of the year. Our overall bottom line expenses are trending at 74% of budget. So we are 9% below where we should be around this time of year at 83%. So for right now, we're showing a net revenue a little south of $900,000. So things are going pretty well. We do have to iron out some of our minor fluctuations. If you look at the percentage column on our expenses, I'm most concerned when I see numbers that are way high. for the year to date at this point. But fortunately, there are small ticket items, things like postage and office supplies. The legal expenses can get pretty expensive, but fortunately, we're only budgeting 5,000 for that, and we're at 14,000. I can talk more about that, but legal expenses are the huge wild card in budgeting. You never really know what's going to come down the pike in any given year. But we want to make sure our budget expenses for our big items, things like what does it cost to maintain our garages? What does it cost to operate our enforcement and meter systems? You really want to hit those targets there. So I think we have better budget numbers for those going into the 2023 year, that hopefully when we get to this point at the end of October, you'll be seeing year-to-date numbers of around 83% for those two numbers. We still have about 70 or so meters we have to send to San Diego and get updated to 4G technology. Those are going to go out within the week. The multi-space meter kiosk has been completed at the University District, and we just have to now locate the 2G meters that are in our central business district, swap them out for the new 4G. So we have almost everything in place to get that project completed before the end of the year. So that's my quick synopsis of the financial position and what basically boils down to the director's report for this month. But I will stay up here because we have a lot to discuss, looks like.
We're good with the budget? Okay. So we're going to C is consider no parking zone on South Adams and East Niels. Let's go over it again.
Yeah, the developer gave an extensive, lengthy discussion on the no parking area. And they came back twice, different committee meetings, and explained it to all of us. I think now we all understand the reasons why, why they're doing what they're doing. And I'm in favor of it now because it makes sense. It makes more sense now than it did before. So.
I was always concerned with safety. That, I mean, if we're talking about safety, then it's a no-brainer. And then hearing from what the planning is, yes, definitely. We do need to come up with some, truck traffic plan for the whole borough that can be enforced and followed through, but that's a different issue.
We do have.
It's just the parking.
All we need to do is enforce the ordinances we have on the books for trucks going through the borough, but it's not a priority for people that are supposed to enforce it.
I want it to be a priority.
I understand.
I think it has to be.
So then you have to
after
attend
this.
Ms. Dorsey's class tomorrow evening. I believe it's the safety committee, and make it a priority because they're the people that have to enforce it. But as far as this is concerned,
This is
safety,
parking. This is fine.
It makes sense now.
Yes.
So I think that this eliminates, and maybe this is what you're speaking to, Bernie, the long-term parking that we had going on there on South Adams Street of box trucks. So I'm, all for eliminating that long-term parking, but for, we've had this conversation the last month or so, making sure there are alternatives for residents that may be using that space. And I've driven down that street now a couple of times on that end of town, and it is box trucks primarily. There's a couple cars parked, peppered in there. But if they can park on the other side of the street, and, again, if we're enforcing the, no long-term parking for whomever's using those spaces indefinitely.
So are we going to recommend this? Yeah. All right. So yes, we're going to do that. Can we move on to D? We
Sure.
good? Discuss the installation of loading zones as a revenue source.
Is this just coming up with a fee structure for loading zones that are requested? And the next question, part two of that is existing ones are grandfathered, or will it be an annual fee? Or do we know?
I don't know. So I found some articles that were talking about monitoring deliveries and monitoring parking in a different way. It would be a huge investment to make any of this happen. Where we basically wouldn't need okay. So what we have right now, we have this sort of one per block thing going on with these loading zones that are not bringing in any revenue to the borough, and that whatever business they're in front of, whether they think it's theirs or not, the other businesses and residents think it is. So what happened with the library? They thought that loading zone wasn't theirs. And when I told it, I had to tell it to them 3 times. No, like that's not theirs. It's a loading zone and it's across the street from you. So use it. It's there, right? I mean, but I didn't understand that. And then what Carlinos had done is great. They did an amazing job setting that up and using that and then elongating that. But it doesn't follow our current system. And if there is actual interest for something like that, and we are moving away from street parking on Gay Street, I just think it makes sense to really dig into this further and figure out a way to get revenue from these spaces, from the deliveries, from the quick stop, in and out, whether it's truck deliveries or, a pickup from a driver, a car, a vehicle, a passenger vehicle. Either way, I think the existing system is outdated. I think that there is, Grubhub and DoorDash, or there's just a lot of different use that didn't exist 10 and 15 years ago. I mean, it's that new of a system, and I think we need to figure out a way that we can get some revenue from these short-term parking spaces. Sean, do you have any insight?
Well, I think we're on the same page. We might be reading different paragraphs. When I looked at this problem, the way the transactions typically come up, it seems like, is that an interested party, be it a business or residence, wants to have a loading zone out in front of their operation. And they can make a cogent argument as to why they need it. And it can be granted by council by ordinance. But then there's a substantial loss of convenience and revenue to the borough. Convenience to the persons who aren't looking for a 15-minute parking space, who'd want to actually stay there for a few hours. But mostly the revenue is what I get stuck on, because in our downtown, we know that high turnover parking spaces generate about $175 a year per linear foot. So you start adding up all those loading zones in town, that's a substantial gap in revenue. I just wanted to impress upon, I almost said Congress, council, that there's you're passing up a chance for a revenue. There has to be some big picture public good to want to be able to do that. And I just didn't want council to ever make a decision based upon one narrow transaction as it got presented to them, because you could piecemeal out the whole downtown into multiple loading zones and it would start to have an impact. We could add up through GIS all the linear feet of loading zones, and I think you may have already mapped that, right? So you just take that number and you multiply it by 175 per foot, probably get a pretty big number. I don't have a solution. I just didn't want I didn't want council to just give it's not Halloween, don't give it away for free.
The large delivery trucks, they won't park there. They double park on Gay Street and it looks like a slalom, okay?
Agreed. Completely.
The enforcement part of the loading zones, like by Marlena's or by Penn's Table, or they're all over the place. The enforcement mechanism for that, I could see Hatfield McCoy starting, because if Marlena pays a fee for that loading zone, and Benny's people are parking in there to pick up their pizza, there's going to be hell of it paid. So it's a catch-22 on enforcement.
Yes.
And then they're going to come to us and say, you instituted this thing, do something about it.
Right.
And we can't put a parking officer at all the different loading
At
zones.
each loading zone,
Yeah,
there's a permanent person.
Yeah.
So I shared an article, I think with everyone, but they were talking about having cameras, like there are cameras at streetlights and toll booths that would take your license plate if you sat there for longer than 15 minutes. And if you are double parked truck or FedEx, they prepay the boroughs to avoid those bills. This is a huge thing, suggestion, but
Pay-by-plate congestion pricing, is that where you're going with this?
I'm saying make the
I like it.
yeah, this could work maybe. So rather than having the individual businesses pay and claim ownership of these loading zones, set up loading zones that are monitored via cameras. And if the DoorDash vehicle is there for 20 minutes, they have to pay whatever it is. If there's a double parked truck, if FedEx is there and they're parked, they have to pay. There's a certain, and you just mail them the bill, and that's how that's done.
We have a fresh person that's in charge of parking. Give her something to do. She has nothing else to do. What the heck? I'm sure she's come across that problem in Fort Lauderdale and Reading and Chester and Downingtown and wherever else. New Garden, the tractors and horses out there. So
I think what we're asking with shutting down Gay Street, we're asking to change a lot of what's going on in town. So now I'm asking for like another level of thinking, but I think it's sort of an opportunity in redesigning the way we're thinking about the traffic and the loading. I mean, it's a mess when you drive down Gay Street at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. It's really scary to try to fit through all those trucks. And if there was some way that we could manage that, and whether it's, the street is only open from 9 to 11 and it's only open for deliveries, and then we're going to charge you on top of that if you're there for X amount of minutes, like, great. I don't know how to really do that.
We have some more visibility now into utilization that we didn't before. So that's a piece of the equation too. If there's enough vacant spaces on a block on a typical time of day of the week, you don't really need a loading zone. There's a space and the truck can pull in there and pay the $1.50 an hour to park there. Or the van or whatever's coming.
Paying to park there.
They still might do that. Yeah.
Well, they're going to always do what they're going to do because of the way they have to move the merchandise around. Yeah, and a short term, if you eliminate the loading zones, you just put a meter there. And that would, because they don't use them anyway. I mean, I'm up there picking up trash almost every day. And that's a convenient pull-in for somebody to run the Griffith's Coffee and grab their coffee and then just, get back out there. That's not what it's designed for. It's designed to unload merchandise, not for shopping.
So if the loading zones are not designed for shopping, if they're actually designed for the trucks to drive, I mean, I don't see it being used that way ever. So, I mean, it's totally used for shopping, that in my mind. Carlino's, it's for shopping. I want to encourage shopping. So in that sense, I want a loading zone where Taylor's Music has a drop off for their little kids to hop out smoothly, and Carlino's has a little, I don't know, makes it all great and easy for them to pick up their turkey or whatever they're getting. I want that. I want more of that. And then I want to charge the delivery trucks for being just anywhere on our street for more than 15 minutes. We can talk more. That's,
Mhm.
that's, yeah. So that was my thinking. Should we move on to the credit card usage at metered parking spaces?
It's something you brought up.
Here's the problem that we have. And I don't know if Sean's fixed it yet. The meter, parking meter, I go up and I put my credit card in and I put in 15 minutes. And I stay there 10 minutes. There's still 5 minutes on the meter. And I leave. Another person pulls up. It's a parking spot. There's 5 minutes on the meter, but I'm going to lunch. So I take my credit card and I put it in the meter. To add time, it doesn't happen. It will not accept a different credit card from the one that's already been posted. And we had real life experiences with it last week, and we've got videos of it. And it's a problem that we have to address.
Agreed.
I don't have a solution tonight. Haven't had a chance to look into it, but I've got some help.
So no, that's a big problem, and yes, we'd love that fixed. Okay. F is discuss request for inclusion of loading zones at 200 East Market Street. That's what I want to do. I don't think we should just do the same loading zone here. I don't think we should do that.
Yeah, I had council having passed the ordinance to create the meter, to regulate this with parking meters, which we'll deploy sometime in the next 60 days. But my suggestion would be to deploy the meters, fold it into our utilization counts, come back after we've gathered enough data, maybe 2-3 months. And again, if we're at that point where we're showing, 75% utilization at its peak and 45% at other times, when the businesses, the gentleman who brought this up said they needed help, then we don't need a loading zone. There's availability on the street. We can always put one in at a later point.
Right.
I think they're much harder to erase.
Yes. I think that's the right move here.
So I just think we need a little bit of time. Obviously, as I mentioned, with the capital project wrapping up, we still have meters to deploy in our downtown. So we would get that wrapped up and then get a plan written up for 200 East Market and deploy those meters. Then we can start collecting information.
I'm in agreement. Thank you. G is discuss the request from the Archdiocese of Philadelphia concerning Prescott Alley between North New Street and North Darlington Street.
I have some pictures. Yeah,
They're always good.
I sent Bill some pictures, and we've done some research. We've looked into the site. I had our staff look at whether we had any infrastructure located in that alleyway. So we're talking about between North Darlington and New, between Chestnut and, okay, that's the big block. Okay. So this picture's from 1938. Okay, and can't laser point or anything, but and you can tell where I'm pointing with my pen, right? This is really helpful. There's an alleyway, now my finger. I can't help it. I have to point. There's an alleyway behind the church that runs basically southwest to northeast. That's what we're talking about. And this is what it looked like, almost 90 years ago. Looks like the sanctuary is there. And notice too that Gay Street, where Gay becomes Hannum Street, continued. Did you see that piece of the corner there where the cars are on? Look at that. Cars were still traveling through that circle. So if we move forward in time here, over time, I guess the Archdiocese purchased these properties, created parking areas. Go forward again. 1970. Isn't that's the year I was born. That looks really old and grainy, doesn't it?
How hard it is when you sign up for something, you got to go like this, and they get back to the year I was born. Yeah, it's like I'm at the casino.
So now by 1992, maybe, whatever that is, 54 years later, the structures on Chestnut aren't there anymore except for the one at the corner, the northwest corner. And there's a parking area. And this looks pretty much what it does today. So if you go forward one more click, you've got a little more parking outlined, and then 2021. So during all this time, the alley has been a public thoroughfare, and cars enter from the west, park, and exit from the west. But the Archdiocese has set up some gates on the eastern edge of the alleyway and about mid-block behind the, I don't know what that building is. I'm sorry. So when kids are out, at recess, we used to call it, playing outside. There's some barriers that keep cars out of that spaces and hopefully kids and youngsters inside. Although there are some older kids at that school who hopefully should know not to run out in traffic. So that's what's going on right now. And the Archdiocese is petitioning us to consider vacating the alleyway. In other words, making it part of those properties. I could show you on Chesco Views, none of these lots that have been purchased over time have been consolidated. So there's actually somewhere between 10 and 12 different lots there that are all owned, single owner, except for that one holdout in the northwest corner that never sold. It's also interesting to note that Hannum Street here is closed in present day, and those three buildings in the southwest corner were torn down and rebuilt. And it looks like it might be a convent or home for priests. I don't know which. It looks residential to me from the front side. So we did look, and there is infrastructure in that alley. There is storm sewer and sanitary. Storm and sanitary. So I can't make the decision on this. The decision for council to consider is whether or not you want to vacate the alleyway. I can't make that decision for council. It has to be done through an action of council, but there is infrastructure in there that we would need to maintain. So I wouldn't want to see any buildings built over it. And I'd want us to have the borough to have a right of entry to maintain that infrastructure. You don't have to vacate this property. Maybe you want to think, well, 1938, it's not that long ago. Maybe 60, 70 years into the future, there's homes again facing Chestnut Street. And wouldn't it be great to have an alley for services to access the rear of those properties? And I would agree with that. That would be a preferred way for this block to be designed, because it's really nice to have alleyways where you can put your trash out, or you can park and so forth. It makes for a better streetscape. So there's that to consider. And then there's the question, if you do want to vacate, should there be a price attached to that transaction?
Is there a way that we can let them close access and use the surface, but not give it to them?
I mean, that's essentially what they're doing today.
Yeah, the
No.
insurance does not permit that. Their insurance, the Archdiocesan insurance doesn't permit that. They're not actually allowed to even shut the gates because it is a public road. going through there. They shut the gates to protect the children during recess. They actually currently use the alley for drop off and pickup at the end of school. The footprint that they have there, except for the house down in the corner of Chestnut and New, that entire super block that they have there is, over years have been developed by St. Agnes and also by the Archdiocese. Every property in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia is owned by the current Archbishop or Cardinal. Every time somebody becomes Archbishop or Cardinal of Philadelphia, they're the new owners of every piece of property in Philadelphia. The reason why they want us to vacate the spot between Darlington and New is so that insurance purpose wise for themselves, they can stop cars from going through there when they deem necessary. Because currently, right now, they're not allowed to do that, even though they're doing it. Yeah. Yeah. They
They've
do it
been
every
doing
day.
it for a long time.
Yeah, they do it every day. The nice thing is that unlike the university, we collect roughly about $10,000 a year from St. Agnes in stream protection money. They came to me a while back and tried to convince me that they should not have to pay the $10,000. But of course, I didn't relent on that. So, but the church actually feels that that's, that block is their campus, and they want to be able to control who comes in and out of the campus.
Why is this coming up now? I mean, I used to live up like a block away, and it's been like this.
It's the insurance carrier that the church has to get liability insurance, and also the archdiocese, the liability of driving a car through through that area. So, and we do have sewer and stuff underground, and we would need an easement for that. So we can go in there if something breaks. We just fixed a sinkhole in there. Public Works went in there and fixed a sinkhole at the corner of Darlington and the alley, Prescott Alley there. So that's what it's for.
So this is a new revelation for the insurance because they've been doing this for, I'm going to say at least 25 years, if not longer. So to Ms. Vaccaro's, what changed?
That I can't tell you. Our solicitor and the solicitor for the parish and the lawyers for the archdiocese are supposed to be talking. We probably would get a better answer after Mr. Metrick talks to Kristen Camp, after she talks to the different lawyers that come back to us.
Yeah.
But this was a request of theirs. All across Gay Street, which is not a problem. You have the rectory at the far left-hand side, you have the church, then you have the original St. Agnes High School, which was turned into Bishop Shanahan, then you have the convent. Then the square black roof in the back, that's the gymnasium, Thomas Patrick, and then they build a house, elementary education building with the green roof. So that's their campus right there. So I think once we get more information from the three lawyers talking about it, we'd have a better answer for what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd very much like to have that conversation with the applicant and talk again with the committee next month on this issue. But those are the decisions. This is really a policy. It could boil down to a policy decision. Do you want to agree to their ask, and do you want to attach a price to doing that transaction?
Is there a way that if we did do it, and then for some reason they left this area, that we would get it back?
Nope.
So it's gone. If we say, okay, it's gone.
Gone for good.
Part of their parcel. Like Mr. Metric mentioned, there were, I believe, 14 houses, individual houses across there. And the only one that didn't sell was the one down the left-hand corner. And that's a church down that corner. And, but they, at this current, the school and the church has been there since 1799. And the St. Agnes School, elementary school, has been there 150 years, founded by St. John Newman. And the IHM nuns came shortly after that. So that's the footprint story. So,
That's the property on Gay Street, right? That's
Yeah,
what you're talking
that's-
about.
yeah, the whole frontage on Gay Street from Darlington to New, the rectory is to the left and the convents to the right, and everything else is in between. Yeah, so.
So I think this also plugs in. It's something that I've been ruminating on a lot, having thought about parking and the property that the borough owns that are parking lots, and our symbiotic relationship with our downtown businesses and residences, that we're a big player downtown. So what are we going to do with all these lots? Do we have a real estate strategy in place for the future of the town? And this is something that plugs into that thinking as well. I don't have it all thought out. It's a conversation we're going to have and develop over time, but I think what you do with your property downtown is going to make a big difference. And I urge you not to give anything away for free.
Mr. Jingles doesn't give anything away. I mean, on a side note, the Spaz lot, which is right opposite St. Agnes, because we know the county is never going to go anywhere. The buildings are there, and Eli Kahn's going to build another building across from 313. It might not be a bad idea to do a private, public partnership and put a multi-level garage there so we can capitalize on different levels, because it's on an angle, so it wouldn't look bad. Come in the lower end and leave the upper end at future date, because we could actually capitalize on that irregular lot there and probably make more money to keep the county employees out of Chestnut Street garage. That would be more, and it'd be more beneficial for them all to be at that corner. So that's future down the street.
I want that all over the place. So I'm all for that. That's great. That lot could use some beautification. A little bit of love would be nice there.
I agree with, the committee, Mr. Metric, that once we hear back from the lawyers on the rationale behind everything, it would probably make more sense to us.
Okay. We're going to move on to 4 action items. A is approve the October 2022 Parking Committee meeting minutes. Sorry. Good. Okay. Approved. Approve installing 2 additional handicap parking spaces at 508 East Minor Street.
I would ask the committee to consider these next 3 items at the work session. I'm sorry, we're just been, 5 days back. I've been saying that a lot tonight. We need to collect more information about these 3 instances. We have someone monitoring the usage of the space on South Adams. We're looking at 712 South Penn Street, making sure there aren't other existing handicap spaces. And there are actually 2 existing handicap spaces on that block of East Minor. So that's going to be something to consider. In fact, the other 2 spaces that was the address that was applied for. So I'd like to have more, I just need a little more time to bring that information, and we can discuss it next week, hopefully.
Fine with us.
Okay. But I don't think we need to push these to the next month. We can figure this out.
Then we're going to move on to other business. Hearing none, we can adjourn at 7:38 p.m.